in came all these bright blue orbs. These orbs were dimensional. They were three-dimensional, round balls like balloons, and they were fluttering and glittery like a sparkler, like a firework. And inside each one of them, I could see the white core. And they were intelligent because they didn't run into each other. They were going around each other, but they did not communicate with me at all. They were just observing me, I think. I'm Dr. Lynda Cramer, and if you haven't heard of me and my experiences, I was very fortunate in 2001 to die. I was clinically dead for over 14 minutes. And during that time, because time doesn't exist outside this three-dimensional world, I went to heaven for what I believe to be 5 years. So, first of all, people say, well, what's your evidence that you died? One of the things that I love showing people are all my medical files. So here's my medical files with all my ECGs, hospital visitation at the North Cabarrus County Hospital in Concord, North Carolina, USA. That's where I passed away. So what happened to me has changed my life forever. So not only am I going to share my NDE with you today, I'm going to inspire you afterwards to bring out your best so you can be who I am now. I have suffered brain cancer, throat cancer, and a broken neck. I have honest when I say I've healed all three of those. I no longer have a brain tumor. So I want to tell you after my experience how you can get through both physical and mental injuries and illnesses so you're your best version. So let's start from the beginning. It was May 2001. My husband and I were not getting along, and I don't need to tell you what was going on in our relationship. But on May 6th, I went to bed and I was extremely sick. I woke up at about 2 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't breathe. It was a very big effort, and I was busting to go to the toilet. And our toilet was an ensuite off the bedroom. And I remember how slowly I had to walk to get there because I just simply could not breathe. So as I sat on the toilet, I went to sleep. I wasn't aware at that point that that was my last breath. When I had that experience, my ex-husband said that he heard someone banging on the wall and it woke him up. Please know that was not me, because I was already unconscious as soon as I sat down on the toilet. So whoever woke him up, thank you to that angel, because I do see angels now is another thing I do. So let me go through what happened with me, guys. I passed out in the bathroom, which is over here. This is our bedroom, and he was asleep here and heard me apparently knocking on the wall. So he came in and he dialed 911, which is the American Emergency Services phone number. As soon as I closed my eyes and went to sleep, I found myself floating above the ceiling over here in the living room. So there's my body, there's where I was floating. So when I was floating here, I was up near the ceiling, looking down, and I could see the whole living room. I could see the front door over to my left. I could see the door to the right, which is the bedroom entrance, which is over here. I could see the bedroom entrance, which is here. And I saw the first two paramedics come through the front door. They ran past with a big blue bag and they went into the bedroom area. At this point, I wasn't even scared, worried, concerned. I was just happy and content to float there, watching and seeing what was going on. Then a sheriff came in. Now, this sheriff, funny thing, because this is a good experience, even though I know he's dead to experience it. He had a shirt on with one of his buttons was so tight that I could see his skin because it buckled. He was actually a little bit pudgy for his shirt. And this sheriff was also limping. He had a limp. And as he came in the door, he actually sat on one of the chairs in the living room, which is very important because how would I know that? Because my body was over in the bathroom over here, and he was sitting here in the living room. So over the next 45 minutes in Earth time, I watched the second advance crew come from the paramedics. I saw the fire department turn up, and I saw some other people in uniforms I didn't even know of. So there was about 6 people in the house. And because I was floating right above them, and I was looking and watching and observing everything they were doing, I knew what their conversations were. I saw what they were writing on their clipboards and in their notebooks. I saw name badges on their sleeves. I saw badges on their sleeves and I saw name badges. So that was important because when I woke up, I remembered all that. So it was confirmed. After 45 minutes, they brought my body out on a gurney. And I was looking at this woman because I had no connection to her at all. And I had no care. I was so peaceful. That's where it was. It was so peaceful. So I watched them wheel her out and I was thinking, what did they do to her hair? Because it was all matted like it had gel or oil in her hair, which is one of those similarities that a lot of people say when they see their own dead body when they pass over. So there's a little confirmation there that this is a real event. So they took me out, or I should say they took her out because I was separate at this point. And then I saw all the other people leave the house. My ex-husband was the last one to leave. He closed the door and he left. And I was still floating there in the dark. And the door opened. And in through the front door, which is how the hell does this stuff work? In came all these bright blue orbs. Now, here's a picture of what I drew when I woke up. These orbs were dimensional. They were 3-dimensional, round balls like balloons. And they were fluttering and glittery like a sparkler, like a firework. And inside each one of them, I could see the white core. And they were intelligent because they didn't run into each other. They were going around each other, but they did not communicate with me at all. They were just observing me, I think. So these orbs, some were little, some were quite big. They were hovering around me, and I wasn't scared at all. Again, no fear. I was just calm and content to let them do what they were doing. And one thing I must not note at this point while I'm floating, when I looked down, I had no feet. Below my knees, it sort of just dwindled to nothing. My feet were invisible. I had no feet when I was floating above my body. So these orbs were going around, and then instantly they all stopped, and they all shot out through the front door, and the front door shut again. How does a door open and close when it's locked? This represents to me that I was now not in the 3-dimensional world that we're aware of. I was in a different dimension, a different alternate reality. I'm not sure what you want to call it. But then I went into what I call the fog stage. It's like closing your eyes and you open your eyes again and you're in a totally different location. But you don't feel yourself moving. There's no travel involved. And when I woke up, I'm standing in this amazing field of flowers. There's millions of flowers on rolling hills. And as I look out, I can see buildings over way, way, way over on my left. And that was a big city. I could see streams leading to lakes and oceans. Behind me, I could see huge, huge trees, like the size of Mount Everest trees. I could see more mountains behind me because now everything is panoramic. I could see everywhere without turning my head. It was like my eyes were going around inside my head. So I was now in this position where I was complete with everything around me. So as I looked down at these flowers, I now had feet. And as I went to walk, I put one of my feet forward. The plant moved itself so I wouldn't crush it. And this is something that I like talking about because now that I'm an energetic being, I could not crush another energetic being the flowers. So they knew that I was still thinking I was in a body. So we had this communication with the plants. And then as I looked out to the trees and the mountains and even these concrete buildings of the city, which were probably 1,000 miles away if I could have estimated distance, we all could communicate together as one. I was aware of everything that was happening with everything in this place. How many people did I see in this place? Thousands of people. I saw dogs, dinosaurs, all the animals of Earth. I saw animals that we don't have here anymore. I saw people dressed in medieval clothes. I saw people dressed in futuristic sci-fi type clothes. I saw architecture from medieval times of the beautiful castles, but then I saw amazing architecture that we haven't even thought of yet because it's so far in our future. But one thing I do want to stipulate is in this place, there was no technology. In these buildings, I saw stairs leading from floor to floor, but there was no elevator. I saw roads, but there were no cars. I saw houses, but we don't need to eat, we don't need to sleep, we don't need to use a bathroom. So it's just a common security place that we can stay in where we can just ponder and think. Because pondering and thinking is a big thing that we do in heaven. We are constantly what I would call contemplating. Now, we know that word because when we go to churches, a lot of churches have that little garden out the back with a little seat and an angel statue, and they call that their contemplation garden. And that is actually what we do in heaven quite a lot. So there were chairs everywhere where people could pause and think. And it's when we thought, we create what we think. So I watched this medieval lady, and she's in the really long medieval robe with the big headwear that they used to wear and the flowing gown. Instantly, she transformed into a 1970s hippie. She had a little mini dress on, she had a short black bob, and totally different. Instantly. I saw a dog instantly turn into a little boy. I saw a dinosaur, big dinosaur, but remember here there's no fear because these animals respect us as much as we respect them. And they're not out to eat us because nobody needs food. So there's no fear And if we take away that survival instinct of needing food and safety, security, everyone is happy and welcoming and loving. Yeah. So when I saw dinosaurs and they instantly changed into a little bear, and you think, what? How does that work? But then I worked it out. So as I'm watching this other lady, she was walking down one of the paths, and I'm following her. And as I was concentrating on her and I was thinking about her, I became her. I was now inside the energetic being of what she was. And now I could feel myself, because everybody feels each other, everything feels, because we're all one. I could feel myself, Lynda, behind me as the woman, observing. So I turned around and I'm smiling at myself. Wow. So whilst I'm in this lady, I knew every past life she'd had. I remembered memories of every past life she'd ever had. I remembered so many things that when I came back out of her, I had to sit down on one of the chairs and think about it for an extremely long time, going through her memories of all the things that she'd done in her life. So then, one of the things I love talking about is the ducks. I saw a flock of ducks. Gaggle of geese. I think it's called a flock of ducks, a group of ducks. And instantly I'm one of the ducks. And it's a funny that only yesterday I was just talking to a man yesterday on Zoom. And I said, as soon as I think of that duck, I am the duck again. I can still feel the feathers. I can still feel the webbing in my 2 feet. I can still feel my beak on my bill. And I can feel my ears and how my ears, even though I don't have physical ears because ducks don't, they just have that little hole behind their feathers. I could hear what was going on as the duck. So even though in this experience now was 22 years ago for me, it's now still present in my awareness today. So I was in this place for about 5 years. How do I estimate that? I say to people, when we're on the phone for an hour and you're talking to a friend, you get off that phone and you see that your call log says an hour. It was the call. So think about what you said. I was talking to people for what I can only estimate would be 2 weeks. I was walking, and I generally walk at about 3 miles per hour. So that's about 5 kilometers an hour because I'm in Brisbane, Australia now. So when I walked to those cities that I'm estimating were thousands of miles away, because the distance, you see the building this big, and as you get closer and closer, it gets bigger and bigger. I estimate that I was walking for months just to get to the building. And then I would walk for months to get up to the river. And I'd walk for months to get up to the mountain ranges and interacting with people and having to pause to contemplate things. And so I reckon I was in this place for about 18 months. 18 months, I think I was there on our time, just based on how long it was for me to walk. Because as you travel, you do see houses going past, you see the trees going past, so you can sort of estimate how fast that distance would be. So, yeah. So how was it in this place? Was there music? Yes. The music was everywhere. There was no speakers, but I could hear the dim music, and it was nothing like we have here. When I close my eyes at night, I can still hear the music. I'm hearing it right now because it's so vivid still right now in my conscious awareness right now. And it's sort of like, it's a repetitive tribal type music. And it's so calming, so welcoming. And I just want more of it. It's so attractive that I really, like a magnet, want to go to it. But it was everywhere. There was no source that was emitting this. It was just coming from everything. So there was music. What did the plants look like? I've got a drawing here. Here's my flowers that I drew. Nothing like what we've got here. I can't explain the colors because we don't have we only see about 5% of the color spectrum. So outside of the petals, there was energy coming out of the ends of the petals. Energy, because everything was energy. There was no physical beings there at all. And as I realized, the longer I was there, what I thought about, I created. I thought, I create, which is one of my philosophies now. So then, about 18 months into this part, I feel a tap on my shoulder. And it's this female who I believe has been with me since I was a child. And she says it's time to leave. And as I turn to look at her, I'm back in this fog stage. And when I open my eyes again, I am outside this huge church. And when the doors opened and I'm walking in, and it is massive inside. I would say it would be hundreds of feet to the front of the church. The woodwork on the floor would have been from trees that were 500, 600, 800 feet tall. And the widths were 6 feet, 8 feet, 12 feet wide. So you can imagine the size of the plants that were required to build these log panels. And the wood melded in with sandstone. We're talking sandstone blocks that were 10 feet by 10 feet, easy, 20 feet by 20 feet, some of them. And along the sides of the walls were pews. Now, if you know what church pews look like, wooden chairs, these were massive. 20 or 30 people could sit on one, and it was made from one plank of wood. That's how long these pews were. And they were all along the sides of this church with all these huge stained glass windows. The beautiful colours that I can't explain again because we just don't have the colours here. And then right at the top, as I'm walking through this church, right at the top, there were three beings. So here's my picture of the three beings. So here's me, because I was still in my pajamas at this point. I still had my feet at this point, and these three were at the front of the church, but they weren't physical. They were energy. So as I looked at them, the energy was going up their bodies like a reverse waterfall. And when the energy got to their heads, it was spiraling both left and right at the same time in this three-dimensional vortex. It was sort of like going like this. And these beings were, the two on the sides were probably about 8, 9 feet. And this one in the middle was about 12 to 15 feet tall. They were bigger than me. They did not talk to me like talking like we do through a mouth because they didn't have a mouth. But I heard telepathically, we are not here to judge. And it was in that moment that I had that instant knowing of what I had to do. I knew that I had to open this box that was glowing energy out of it. It was sort of like what we would expect with the Ark of the Covenant, if you've read the Bible. So there was energy coming out of this box. And as I took off the lid and I looked inside, there was no walls, no floor. It was eternity inside this box, sort of like the Doctor Who TARDIS, when you go inside the TARDIS and it just opens up into a million spaces. So I'm looking in this well of infinity, and it's full of these little bubbles, orbs, whatever you want to call them. And inside each of these little energy bubbles was a video screen. And on each video screen was a memory of something I had done. So I died when I was 35 years old. So inside this well was everything I had ever done. And I knew intuitively what I had to do. I had to pick up each memory and look at this video screen and watch this little action replay of what I'd done. And then I had to judge myself for what I did. They didn't have to judge me, these big three beings. They were just observing and offering me the support to go through what I had to do. Now, what was it that I was about to do is what a lot of people call our life review. So our life review is picking out one memory at a time. So here's a picture I drew of me holding one of these orbs like a bubble, and inside is the video screen. This one here is the one I like talking about because it's me when I was a child, probably 18 months old. I still had a nappy on, and I'm pulling the cat of on the tail of my grandmother's cat. So when I looked at this memory and I'm holding this memory and I'm seeing the white cat, there I am in my nappy, my diaper. In America, they call it diapers. I'm sitting on the grass in my grandmother's front yard. Instantly, I was looking at both the cat and Lynda. And then instantly I became Lynda. I could feel the grass under my bottom. I could feel the breeze going through my body. I could see my grandmother's house. I was back in 1967 when I was 18 months old. I could see the cars on the street, which were 1960 cars. I'm this 18-month-old baby, and I'm going through this memory where I pulled the cat's tail. I knew it was wrong because obviously I'd already been told by my mother, don't do that. But I pulled this cat's tail anyway. And then I started giggling. I remember giggling, thinking it was really funny to pull this cat's tail. But then I'm back out again. And I'm watching this bubble in my hand of the cat with me again as 18 months old. And now I'm back into the cat. And I can feel my whiskers. And as the breeze comes through, I can feel the whiskers twinging and the sensation of them being on like patrol, censoring what was going on around them. I could feel my fur and I could feel my tail. And as I stood there looking at this little child, thinking, oh, please be nice, I felt the child pull my tail. And the pain was excruciating all the way up through my spine, right up to my head. And I screamed like this and I ran away. And look, it's making me cry because it was so painful. What I had to just remember what I had caused. So then I come back out to myself where I'm again looking at this picture in my hand. And I started to think, why did I do that? Now I know the consequence of that action. I could start to heal that memory. I can't go back and say sorry to that cat because I'm in heaven now and I'm in my life review. But I could talk to that cat and say, I was so sorry. I did not mean to do that. I had no idea that my action had that ripple that would cause this to you. And this is how we heal, by seeing that perspective of what the other person goes through. We look at the ripple of the energy that we create. And as I healed this memory, which in our time would have taken about 15 minutes, half an hour, and the tears are running down my face. This memory in my hand, the whole orb, simply disappeared to nothing. And as I looked down, all the water of my tears on the ground simply disappeared as well. Because now I've healed, I'd forgiven, and I had taken away the emotional connection of that memory. So no more would I be triggered with having that fluctuation of emotional reaction to the action I did when I was 18 months old. So as I stood there, I knew then it was time to pick up another memory. So out of all these memories, I probably processed about 6,000 to 8,000 of them. Things I did when I was 17, things I did at 24, things I did when I was 30, words that I'd said to people that I thought was just in jest, but they hurt the other person so badly. I saw happy things I did, like picking a flower, which, hello, picking a flower, the tree has to feel that. So you go through that. Why did I pick the flower off that tree? And then as I give the flower to somebody else as a gesture of love, I feel that love, and it was tenfold love. Tears were falling down everywhere. But once we heal and we forgive what we've done, all that pain represented by my tears vanished into nothing else anymore. So I went through about 6,000 to 8,000 of these memories. Good things were tenfold. Brilliant emotions were bursting out with tears. Bad things I'd done, like smashing a window, is when I realized that everything of Earth does have a consciousness. Every single rock, plant, mineral, ore, everything has a consciousness, an energy. So even though they don't have the five senses like we have, sight, smell, hearing, etc., everything from rocks to water does have some sort of ability to be aware. So when I smashed this window made of glass, which is natural fibers, I felt what it was like to be torn apart. When I cut down a tree, I felt that tree's pain of being butchered in half. So I had to say sorry for that. So when I talk about cutting down wood, because we use a lot of wood, I've got a lot of wood furniture in my house. I always thank my furniture whenever I buy wooden furniture. I thank everything I buy into my own existence because I know it's an energy force like I am. So how long was I in this process for? Where it's like half an hour to 45 minutes per memory. And I processed like 6,000 or 8,000 of these memories. I'd say again, I was there for at least 18 months. 18 months. So with the 18 months from heaven, that's 36 months. So that's about 3 years in total, just there. And then as I'm processing these memories, I get this tap on the shoulder again. And it's this woman, and she says it's time to go. And again, as I turn to look at her, who's that touching me? I'm back in this fog stage. And as I open my eyes, without feeling of moving at all, there's no travel, I'm in this white space where there's no walls, no ceilings, and no floors. I look down and it's just infinite white underneath, but I can't feel the floor. And I know, and it's not like floating, but I don't feel the floor under my feet. And as I'm looking around thinking, where the heck am I now in this white space? Which By the way, if you've watched the TV series Manifest, the last episode when they step off the plane, they're in the same white space. So there you go. It's in Manifest if you want to watch that. Okay? As I'm looking around in this white space, way over in the distance, I see this woman, and she's only about this big. And as she walks, she's walking towards me, she's getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And she comes right up to me and she says, "What are you doing here?" And I'm sort of taken aback at this point because, for like 3 years, I've just spent in harmony, love, supportive environment, beautiful, beautiful feelings. And this woman's angry with me. "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. Don't you know you're supposed to go back?" And I said, "Well, how can I go back when I don't know where I am?" And she went, "Oh," like this. She calms down and she says, "You don't know who I am, do you?" And I said, "No." She says, "I'm Karina. I am your great, 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 great grandmother." And then she started telling me everything about her. She told me when she was born. She told me when she died. She told me who she was married to, where she lived. And back in the 1830s, she was telling me how to make an axe out of a branch limb. She was telling me how to melt the iron to make the axe hammer, the axe head. She told me how they sew clothing without sewing needles. She showed me how she made this device that folded. She puts it on her back and goes down to the river and she uses as a washing board to wash clothes. She spent an extremely long time telling me how to grow potatoes. Months and months and months telling me all these things about her life, what it was like back in the 1830s, how to build a saddle to put on a horse, how to train a horse so you can ride it, how to make rope. She went through all this stuff, how to make a fire without flint. Masses of information. So I reckon just talking about her was at least a year when she is going into so much detail about so many things. And it was amazing, simply amazing, the difference within her life to my life. But then she started talking about my life. And as I said, I died in 2001. The first thing she said to me was, "You must remember this future date in 2005, because this is the date to conceive your child." What? This was like 4 years in my future. So thankfully, I remembered that date because now I've got my daughter and she's now 18 years old in 2024. So she was born in 2006, my girl. So thank God I remembered that date. So when people ask me how real was this, how did I know the date in 2001 to conceive my daughter in 2005? My great 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 grandmother told me that I had to leave America before September. She said, "If you don't leave in July or August, because I died in May," she said, "if you're not gone by July or August, you will be rounded up after this event in September." She said, "The whole world will be watching as the society falls." She said, "There will be two that will be impacted." And as we know, Twin Towers fell in September 2001. She said, "The whole world will be watching. Everyone will be covered in dust. And many thousands will perish in this event." But she said, "For you in America, you must leave that place and return to where you are from, which is Australia." She said, "If you stay, that you will be rounded up as an illegal immigrant and made to return. And as we know, after 9/11, they rounded up all the illegal immigrants and everyone got deported. I would have been in that because my ex-husband had until August to do my immigration papers and he didn't want to do them. And that's why we were fighting all the time. So I would have been, in September, I would have been an illegal immigrant because I hadn't lodged my paperwork. So I came back to Australia after I woke up. She told me that I would be working with the police for 10 years. I worked with Queensland Police from September 2002 until 2012. 10 years. She said I'd need 2 years off because of getting through all the stress that they cause. And believe me, I was very stressed. I've got PTSD still today. And then she said, for 2 years, you will be a first aid trainer. Now, I didn't go out and sign up to be a first aid trainer. I actually got asked to do it because I needed a first aid course to do something else I was doing. And the trainer came up to me and he said, have you done CPR? And I said, yes, I've done CPR 6 times. And I've also had it done on myself when I died. So I became a first aid trainer in January 2015. And I stopped that in January 2017. So for 2 years, I did first aid. So when I woke up in 2001, and I was telling people I'm going to work for the police for 10 years, and then I'll be a first aid trainer for 2. I knew that 20 years before it happened. So, or 15 years before I started first aid. So I have a lot of prophecies now that she told me. She told me earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes. She told me about elections, who would win. She told me a lot of natural disasters, like Indonesia. 250,000 people perished in the floods. Heartbreaking. But then she started telling me why these events must occur. So we went through life lessons. We went through why we're here. Because there are lessons to learn in everything that we do. Our lessons sometimes are about us, how to make us better, develop our own innate abilities. But then sometimes we're here to teach other people their lessons as well. So that's why angels intervene and put us into those synchronicities where we are in that perfect spot at the perfect time to help somebody else. Angelic intervention is one of the books I'm currently working on because I've seen angels a few times in my life. You know, as I said at the beginning, let me just keep going with my NDE, sorry, because now that I'm in this white space talking to Karina, and she said to me, at the end of it, she said, you must not ever go into that. And as I turn around, I see the tunnel. So here's a picture of the tunnel. She said, if I go into this tunnel, so here's Karina, there's me still in my pajamas. Here's Karina. And this tunnel, it was going left to right as well as right to left at the same time. And I could see down inside it. And it was pure white at the other end of it. So there it is, pure white at the other end of it. And I wanted to go in there so much. I had to pull myself out of it because it was like a magnet pulling me in. And I'm like, oh, I want to go in there. And she said, if you go in there, you will never be able to go back to your body. She said, this is where we reincarnate. So she told me all about reincarnation, all about our life lessons, all about how karma works. Ripple effects that we do to other people have to be realigned, like our life review, back to calmness. So if we do something bad for someone, ultimately that has to realign back to good. So she shared a lot of prophecies with me that did come true. And she said at the end of it, she said, you must go back. You can return it whenever you like. And I said to her, how do I go back when I don't know where I am? And she said, all you have to do is think about where you were because we create what we think. Now, how many times in heaven did I have that thought? So when I estimate how long I was in this white space with Karina, I would say I was there for about 2 years with her because it was so long. When she was explaining that tsunami, when she was explaining to me, I'm going to be sitting on my computer watching a volcano erupting where lava is going over 100 miles an hour. And she said it's going to be on the news. You'll be watching it on your TV. And she said it will create 3 miles of land in Hawaii. Now, we all know the volcano that erupted a few years ago in Hawaii. I was glued to the screen watching that every day. So she was right with that one as well. So there's a lot of personal things that she told me about my life, like where I worked, child I'd have, other things that would come to me, which I don't need to tell people, it's private. I tell my friends, so I get the confirmation there. But ultimately, now that I've come out of this event, who am I now? And it all started when I woke up. Because Karina said, all you have to do is think about where you are. So I started thinking about the house that I lived in. And straight away, I've got my eyes shut and I can hear a lady saying, if you can hear me, squeeze my hand. And again, now I've got a hand that I can squeeze. And I can hear this lady because I've got my eyes shut. And she says, oh, she's squeezing my hand. She's squeezing my hand. And as I woke up, as I opened my eyes, they're pulling this blue tube out. Oh, I'm short-sighted, so I could see this very vividly. It was very focused. They're pulling this blue tube out of my throat because I've been on life support for a week. Oh my God. Um, and that's when it started to get really weird. I was in ICU and a nurse came in and I said to her, how's Motley? She said, Motley? What do you know? I said, oh, come on, you've been here all week telling me about your cat Motley. He's got long brown hair, grey hair. He's got a kidney disease because he's 13 years old. You don't know whether to put him down. The vet says $5,000 to put him for pills and an operation. You don't know whether to put him down. You don't know whether to get another kitten. You're in a loggerhead over what to do about Motley. She said to me, Lynda, I do have a cat called Motley. He is 13 years old. He does have kidney disease. But how do you know all this? Because I've been downstairs working down there for the past 2 weeks, and this is my first time in ICU. So we had a discussion about Motley and some other stuff because it was so apparent what I knew about her. Then I get transferred to my own room, and classic room, there's a wall, there's a window down the side of me, I've got a TV on the wall, there's a chair over past me in the corner, and I've got my own little bathroom near the front door. And as I wake up in this room, there's 5 people standing well, 4 people and a dog standing at the end of my bed. There's an old lady sitting on the chair, there's a middle-aged man, there's a little girl playing with a big Labrador dog. Nurse walks in. She's carrying a clipboard like this. She's got a clipboard. And she says, how are you today, Lynda? And I said, oh, I'm just listening to these people. And she said, what people? And I said, these people, they've brought the dog in. She couldn't see it. So I looked at these people and I said, if you can make a noise to let her know you're here, can you please do that? instantly, bang, bang, bang on the glass. The whole glass is doing this in like it's about to shake. She's freaking out, the nurse, drops her clipboard, and she's running out of the room. She never came back, by the way. So I've always seen ghosts since I was a kid, but since my NDE, it all got heightened. I know songs on the radio before you turn the radio on. I can be watching TV and I know what ads are coming up on the breaks. I go for my phone just before it rings. I wake up just as my phone is about to ring. I'm very intuitive. I've got a lot of psychic gifts now. One of those is that I do see angels. One of those is now that I see spirit guides. That all started one day when I saw this lady who is now with me all the time. I believe it was her that was tapping me on the shoulder in heaven. She appeared at the pool. So I've got a picture of what I drew that day. October 7, 2019. I'm at the pool with my daughter and I'm in they've got those little floaty buoys on the side. So you've got the lanes. And I'm walking up, bopping, doing my little exercises, and I hear Lynda. And I turn around, and she's standing in the pool, but there's no water around her. It's all energy in the water. And I looked at her, and I was like, what the heck? And she points at me, and she says, are you ready? And I said, ready for what? And she said, we think you're ready. So who's we? Who's we? Is it her and me? Is it her and others? Is it me and others? I don't know. But about 2 weeks later, I started seeing spirit guides. A man came over to my house, and as he knocked on my door, he had a big white rat on his shoulder. And as I opened the door, I said, oh, wow, I love your pet rat. He said, where, what? And when he's like calmed himself down, the rat stood up on its back legs, looked at me straight in the eye, opened its mouth, and it said, I may be his rat, but I am this man's protector. What? So now I see spirit guides. So much to the point where I draw pictures of people's spirit guides, which are all now in my book, Spirit Guides and Life Paths Explained. So I love drawing people's spirit guides. I've got 4 books out there one about spirit guides, one about my NDE, which is also in hard copy, this one, and it's got my photo at the front with the 3 beings. I have one about ghosts because I always have seen ghosts. That's an educational piece. I've also got a book about psychics, how to get psychic abilities, what are they, how to get rid of them if you don't want them. So all my books are available on Lulu. People like coming to me because I like sending people just PDFs if you want a PDF. I'm on YouTube now where I talk about enlightening and self-awareness videos. I talk about prophecies. I talk about a great vast field of heavenly and paranormal topics because I've got such a vast experience. I ended up doing a PhD, so I hope now that gives me some credibility in what I do talk about. Because one of the main things I love talking about now is what I mentioned earlier. I've had a brain tumor. I've had throat cancer. And when I was 20, I broke my neck. People say, oh yeah, sure, you've got all these injuries. Well, can't dispute medical imaging. So x-rays of all my brain tumors and my brain tumor, my throat cancer. So that's an inch lump in my throat. And it's gone now because I thoroughly believe, and I hope that everyone's listening at this point, what we think, we create. The more we think, oh, I've got to go to the doctors, I'm stressing today over my daughter, I've got to rush around today and keep myself busy and doing all this other preoccupation or stuff that we do in our lives. The more we concentrate on things that we don't like, the sicker we get. The more uplifting, the more positive, and the more loving we are, and the more we put out energy of caring, supportive, nurturing, compassionate feelings, the more our energy field creates it as well. So, you look at me now, I'm 58 years old. I've got a broken neck. I should be a quadriplegic. One of my x-rays that I only got 2 years ago, the doctor actually looked at me and he said, "This is not your x-ray because you should be in a wheelchair." C2 and C3 are not connected in my neck. How am I walking? How am I talking? I am a walking miracle because I believe in the power of heaven and what is created there. We all create our own version of heaven. We all create our own conscious awareness. We all have the capacity to heal ourselves. So I look at science. Science says that our cellular network regenerates itself every 90 to 110 days. So therefore, every 3 months, we get new skin, new organs, new lungs, hearts, new feet, new toenails. So why do people have injuries longer than 3 months? It's because we believe we have it. So one of the things that I love talking about is the I am, I haves, and I do's. I've got heaps of post-it notes all through my house when I was sick. And please note that I say when I was sick, because right now I have my health. I have the capacity to heal myself. I have loving, supportive family and friends who know what I am. I do have my health. I do every day say how healthy I am. I do live to be positive. I do look after myself. And I am healthy. I am healed. I am full of vibrational energy that cures me and the whole planet as I ripple out into the universe. So I live by the I ams, I haves, and I do's. I repeat this to myself every single day because that's how important it is now for the world. Talking about prophecies, one of the prophecies is that 2024, because we're not there yet, and 2025, we could have nuclear war. Look what's already building in the Middle East. Lebanon has just told Australians to get out. Now, I've been telling people for 20 years there is a possibility of nuclear war, 2023, 2024. I have been productively trying to eliminate that bad energy, as with a lot of other psychics and spiritual people around the world. The more we put out peace, the more we eradicate things like jealousy, sarcasm, putting people down, being offended, all this negative stuff that we all do. I'm even guilty of it every now and again. But I pull myself out of it and I say, "Lynda, why were you just so nasty to yourself?" Even if I put somebody else down, I'm being nasty to myself because I'm creating negative energy within myself. So the more I uplift other people, the more I stop bickering and talking about people behind their backs, the more we stop being jealous, comparing ourselves to others. Don't do it. We should be accepting of what we are. We brighten our day by looking at ways to be appreciative, generous, courteous, and most of all, empathic. Because it's through being empathic where we see that perspective. putting ourselves into the shoes of the other person, and we feel what their life is like I did in my life review. That is how we're going to heal this world. That is how we create the love. So in the back of my book, The Teachings of Heaven, it's techniques, exercises, how to raise your vibration exercise, daily affirmation exercises, how to do breathing techniques, how to meditate, how to pray, how to get rid of other energies, how to connect with ourselves. One of my great exercises I love doing in there is how to date yourself, because there's so many people out there now so consumed with this three-dimensional world that we don't know who we are. What are our hobbies? What are our goals? Some people just live to eat and go to work and then sleep. And that is so unfortunate, because I've been given this opportunity to spread the word that we are energetic, powerful battery sources of energy. And if we just tuned in to the higher frequency, which we innately are, which means naturally, we are naturally this high vibrational battery, imagine the hope and the love that we can emit all over the world. Wow. So I invite people to watch me on YouTube, Dr. Lynda Cramer. I invite people to email me. My website's lindaray.info. I invite people to join my paranormal group on Facebook, because I try to do as much as I can for free for people, because the world is hurting now. And I love being able to help others to accomplish and to become their beautiful, best version of who they are. So that's my story. Close your eyes at night when you go to bed and think about who you can be tomorrow that is better than who you were today. The world is crying out in pain at this point, with wars, with pain, with people being offended. There's so many people out there who are demanding, who are deserving, and they're so impatient. So if we can just pause and truly think about who we can be tomorrow, different to today, even if it's just smiling at a stranger or picking up a piece of rubbish and putting it in the bin. I saw a piece of rubbish yesterday and I thought, really? Who did that? And then I thought, it doesn't matter who did it. The fact is, I'm going to be that instigator of bringing in good, loving energy by respecting where I live and putting that rubbish into the bin myself. Little things, little acts of kindness don't cost a cent. If anyone out there does want guidance, I do psychic readings. I do Zoom sessions I do about 3 a day, Zoom sessions with people. I love seeing people all over the planet. You know, memorial ones that I talk about, I spoke to a lady in Cambodia. She earns 20 cents a day is what she earns. I gave her 2 hours of my time to talk to her, because I don't look at financial, materialistic possessions of people. I look at who we are in our hearts. I look at people who are trying their best in a world gone mad, and I'm happy to help in any way I can to help us achieve that.